George Mallory and Andrew Irvine. In June 1924, the British Everest expedition established its final high camp high on the North Col, perched among steep ridges of ice and rock. The air was thin, the temperature below -30 degrees Celsius, and every sound carried sharply in the wind. From this exposed camp, George Mallory and Andrew "Sandy" Irvine prepared for their summit attempt. Their equipment was simple: wool garments, wooden ice axes, and oxygen cylinders that leaked almost as often as they worked. At first light on June 8th, the two men left their tent and moved upward along the northeast ridge. Their teammate Noel Odell, climbing behind them, caught a glimpse of two small figures climbing toward the summit ridge, just before a bank of clouds rolled in. Minutes later, the mountain disappeared into mist. Odell waited through the afternoon, scanning the ridge for movement, but none appeared. When night came without any sign of them, the team realized both climbers were lost. Decades later, in 1999, an American search team found Mallory's body at 26,760 feet, preserved in ice on the north face. His position suggested a long fall. The rope marks around his waist showed that he and Irvine were still connected when the accident happened. Irvine's body and the small camera he carried were never recovered. The 1996 Everest disaster. Early May 1996 brought clear skies and record numbers of climbers to Everest. Dozens of commercial expeditions crowded the South Col route, each planning to reach the top on May 10th. Before dawn, more than 30 climbers left Camp 4, headlamps tracing a slow line up the icy slope. Delays at the fixed ropes forced many to wait in the thin air for hours. By midday, the weather began to turn. Clouds gathered below and the wind grew stronger. Team leader Rob Hall of New Zealand continued upward with one of his clients, Doug Hansen, long after most had turned around. At the same time, American guide Scott Fisher was descending from the summit, exhausted after days without rest. When the storm struck, snow blinded the ridge and temperatures plunged below -35 degrees Celsius. Radio contact faded as night fell. Rescuers reached Hall's position the next day but found him immobile near the south summit. Fisher's body was later discovered farther down the slope. 8 climbers from several teams lost their lives in the storm. Green boots. At roughly 8,500 meters on the northeast route to the summit, climbers pass a small limestone alcove marked by a pair of bright green boots. The body there is believed to be Tsewang Paljor, a member of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police expedition that was caught in the 1996 storm. Paljor's team had pressed on despite worsening weather and reached the summit late in the afternoon. During their descent, the storm closed around them. Search parties later found Paljor in the shallow cave, sitting against the wall with his legs extended toward the trail. His companions were never located. For more than 2 decades, his remains served as a grim landmark for those ascending the mountain, a silent warning about the cost of continuing upward when retreat is the only safe choice. David Sharp. In May 2006, British climber David Sharp attempted Everest alone, carrying little oxygen and no support team. Other expeditions saw him near the summit in the late afternoon, moving slowly but still upright. By nightfall, he had stopped inside the same rocky alcove known as the Green Boots Cave. Through the next morning, climbers ascending and descending passed by, many assuming he was one of the mountain's long frozen bodies. Only later did a few realize he was still alive but unable to move. Attempts to help were brief and desperate. The altitude and cold made any rescue impossible. Sharp died there before nightfall. News of his death spread rapidly, raising difficult questions about ethics on Everest. How much a climber can or should risk to save another when survival for both hangs by a thread? Hannelore Schmatz. In 1979, German mountaineer Hannelore Schmatz became one of the first women to die on Everest. She and her husband had reached the summit late in the day, accompanied by Sherpa guides, and began their descent well after dark. Exhausted, they stopped to rest above Camp 4, though their Sherpas urged them to continue lower. As night deepened, strong winds swept across the slope. When rescuers reached the site days later, they found Schmatz's body still seated, leaning against her pack, her hair and clothing frozen solid. For years, her remains stood near the route to the South Col, visible to passing climbers until falling ice finally swept them away. Francis Arsentiev. In May 1998, 40-year-old Francis Arsentiev, a climber from Hawaii, set out with her husband, Sergei Arsentiev, to achieve a rare mountaineering milestone, becoming the first American woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest without the use of supplemental oxygen. Both had prepared for years, climbing in the Himalayas and training for the physical and mental strain of high-altitude ascents. Their expedition began in late spring, during the small window of favorable weather when climbers attempt the summit push. On May 22nd, after multiple attempts and delays due to equipment problems and exhaustion, Francis and Sergei finally stood on the highest point on Earth. But the climb had taken longer than anticipated, and the descent began late in the day. The couple was forced to spend a night high on the northeast ridge without tents or sleeping bags. At altitudes above 8,000 meters, known as the death zone, Temperatures plummeted below minus 30 degrees Celsius. Oxygen levels dropped to one-third of sea level, and even minor mistakes could be fatal. The long exposure in the open air severely weakened them. By the following morning, Francis was struggling to move. The lack of oxygen and extreme cold caused confusion, slurred speech, and fatigue. Sergei attempted to guide her down the fixed ropes toward lower camps, but progress was slow. At one point, Sergei descended alone to gather supplies and seek help from other climbers. He never returned. Later reports suggest that he may have fallen from a steep section of the ridge while carrying oxygen bottles and food. His body was discovered days afterward lower on the slope. That same day, several international teams encountered Francis near the fixed lines. She was still alive but barely responsive, drifting in and out of consciousness. Climbers attempted to give her oxygen and tried to move her, but the terrain was too steep and dangerous to carry her safely. At such high altitude, with their own survival at risk, they were forced to abandon rescue attempts. Francis remained on the exposed ridge through the day and died later that evening from a combination of hypothermia and oxygen deprivation. Her body lay on the mountain for nearly a decade, visible to climbers on the route. Because of her pale features and serene expression, she became known among mountaineers as Sleeping Beauty. In 2007, a team of climbers led an effort to move her remains to a more sheltered location out of sight of the main path, allowing future climbers to ascend without passing by her final resting place. The Nepal earthquake of 2015. On April 25, 2015, at 11:56 a.m., a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck central Nepal. At Everest Base Camp, hundreds of climbers and Sherpas were preparing for the day when a wall of snow and ice broke loose from the nearby Pamori Peak. Within seconds, the avalanche swept through the camp, flattening tents and equipment. When the air cleared, large sections of base camp had vanished beneath snow. Survivors dug with their hands to free those trapped inside. 22 people were killed, and many more injured. Helicopters arrived later that afternoon to evacuate the wounded. Lincoln Hall. In May 2006, Australian climber Lincoln Hall reached the summit of Everest with his expedition, but began showing signs of disorientation during the descent. Exhausted and unable to think clearly, he stopped responding to his team's instructions. As darkness approached, the team believed he had died and radioed base camp to report his death before descending to safety. At sunrise the next morning, another expedition ascending the route encountered a man sitting cross-legged in the snow, his jacket open, smiling faintly and muttering. It was Lincoln Hall. Against all odds, he had survived the night without oxygen or shelter. The climbers abandoned their summit plans to help him. They radioed for assistance and began guiding him down slowly through the upper camps. After hours of effort, Sherpas from base camp met them on the slope and helped bring Hall to safety. He recovered fully after treatment for frostbite and exhaustion. Khumbu Icefall Avalanche. On April 18, 2014, just after dawn, teams of Sherpas were fixing ropes and ladders through the Khumbu Icefall, the shifting glacier that connects base camp to Camp I. Without warning, a massive serac collapsed high above the valley. The falling block of ice shattered into hundreds of tons of debris that swept directly through the climbing route. 16 Sherpas were killed instantly, and several more were trapped in unstable snow. Rescue crews worked through the day in dangerous conditions to recover the bodies.